Lisa Daly and Lori Goodwin are the Recovering Preacher's Kids. Sit back and relax as they have an unfiltered conversation because let's face it, somebody's just got to say it. Welcome back to the Recovering Preacher's Kids podcast. I am so excited that y'all are joining us today. We yet again have another guest with us, and I absolutely cannot wait for y'all to hear her story. It is a proven track record as we have done the podcast that I struggle sometimes disagreeing with people. I like to have my point heard, and I can agree to disagree, but I think it's fair to say that I struggle if you are unable to agree to disagree. And the Bible is so stark on things that are sin. He is so stark on what is right and what is wrong. And the topic we're going to talk about today can really be a touchy topic in today's society. We struggle greatly with loving people whose lifestyle is not like ours. And so I would like to introduce y'all to Alicia. I cannot wait for you to hear her story of how she and her husband are loving people well. Just give us a little bit of your background and tell us a little bit of your story.
Okay, thank y'all so much for having me here. I am not a preacher's kid. I produce preacher's kids. My husband is a full-time pastor. He's a full-time firefighter. We have 4 kids, and they're awesome. God's been so good. And I lived a very sheltered life, as Miss Lisa can attest to. Camden is its own world.
Yes, it is.
It is such a blessing. And then I married my husband, and that world just got busted wide open. He is one of 3, and both of his sisters are professing homosexuals. And that was something that I was not used to. They're great, and we love them. His younger sister was one of my best friends after we got married. And a little bit of our story and how this topic came about is, like I said, he has 2 sisters. Both of them are professing homosexuals. 2 very different stories as far as how it applies to our family. His older one came out in high school. My husband's 3 years older than me. She's 3 years older than him. So it's been a long time. And so maybe more of the let me prove it to everyone kind of thing is kind of come and gone, and she's settled down. And that makes a big difference. And then his younger one is more new to that lifestyle. So several years back, my son was a newborn. So almost 10 years back, we had a family Thanksgiving, and one of our family members, very religious, and I don't necessarily use that in a negative way. I think he regrets what he did now, but he showed up, and the older sister was there, and her partner might have been there too. That may have been part of the problem. I can't remember. But he said, well, if they're going to be here, we're not. And it caused a bigger scene than it probably should have. And he left. And we're coming over there with our son, holding our son. And she goes, what? So I guess you're next. And I was just following Will's lead. Again, I've never navigated these kind of scenarios. And he looked at her and he said, no, we're just going to love you. And a lot of very well-meaning pastors have, especially as our kids were younger, have suggested that maybe we distance ourselves, maybe we hold them at arm's length. And Will's like, no, that's never going to work for her. It's all or nothing. You either love her with all of your heart, or she's going to take it as complete rejection. She doesn't want anything to do with the faith. And so we've just kept on loving her. And the younger one is a little bit different story. I told you she was kind of newer, very much in the let me prove it to you phase. And so we were trying to have the same kind of relationship with her. And there was an instant where she kind of waited till we were away from the kids and started talking about parts of that lifestyle to them. Our oldest is 10, so they're all really young. And my husband thankfully caught it. He was closer than she realized. And so that was the beginning of what kind of distanced us. And we're just praying that the Lord heals that. So 2 very different stories, but that's our background with that.
Wow.
And you made the statement about your family member or whatever who had made the staunch statement. And I think that's where I feel like a lot of us probably are not really sure where to stand because, we're supposed to take a stand against and say, well, this is wrong and we disagree with it. And I feel like our message as Christians possibly has been too long of, well, if you don't agree with me, then we're turning our back on you. And I see it's like you just explained, it's really hurt. And we had a situation here in town when we had a couple who had a business in town, and there was this divide of some people who, well, you don't need to go support their business. So that's where a lot of the navigation is. How do you love, but at the same time not agree with somebody's decisions or lifestyle?
Yeah.
If that question makes sense.
Yeah. For us, it's a little bit easier. So the older sister and my husband were actually best friends. And then he got saved. He got back in church, complete 180. The Will that I am married to is far different from the Will before God got a hold of his life. And so that change was very hard for her, but it's also a blessing because she's been there through it. So it's not one of those things where, I don't know, I've been loving this person, but is where I stand very clear? Do I need to explain? That's not our story. I know a lot of relationships that probably will have to go through that awkward phase that, like, hey, I don't want you to misunderstand. I do believe this is right or this is wrong. So she knew where we stood. And so in that way, it has been a blessing.
Think though too, it can really be anything, because I have been in a situation where I had a friend who had found herself having an affair, and I just was like, hey, no, you shouldn't do that. And it ended up fracturing the relationship greatly. And I probably didn't handle it as well as I should have. But I look back and I think of all the other times that I have just not seen someone as a person.
Yeah.
I see them as a topic that I disagree with. And Lisa, as you were asking that question, that's what was running through my mind all the times that I see the issue when I look at the person, not the person.
Yeah, that's very easy to do. Something that the Lord has really used in my husband and I's life is a verse in Proverbs. And it says, mercy and truth, iniquity is purged. And by the fear of the Lord, men depart from evil. And that's how God got us. If it weren't for him showing us mercy, but also being very firm about truth, we wouldn't be where we are. And so to also remember, I live a very clean background. Sometimes I tell my story, I'm like, I know, there's no big issues there. Don't laugh at me. I need Jesus just as much as you do. But that's the point, is I need Jesus just as much as she does. And so it helps me to remind me I'm not high and mighty. My sin looks different, but it's the same.
That's very true. Because don't we try to classify sin? Don't we try to say someone living a homosexual lifestyle, well, that sin is a 10, but I gossip and that sin's a 1. It's like we try to quantify it in some kind of way, and it's all sin at the cross.
Yeah. We'd be a lot better if we took our sin just as seriously as we did everybody else's.
All right. I guess it's a lot easier to point that finger at somebody else than look at ourselves, But as you were talking too, it just kind of reminded me the way you and Will are approaching his sisters. If we really are truly honest and we think about it, we look at the scriptures in the New Testament. Who did Jesus do life with? I mean, who was sitting at his table? A lot of the time, you think of Mary Magdalene, and then you had the tax collectors and as the Pharisee says, and the sinners that he dined with, So, yeah, I don't know. It's very convicting, but I do struggle with the whole thing of, if I love this person, am I condoning
Yeah.
what they're doing? So I find myself, well, my only solution is like, I just got to just back away. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It is hard.
The question I have though is, are we more worried that we are condoning the sin of someone, or are we more worried about what other people will think because we're still loving and having a relationship with someone that is living in a way that we disagree with?
Yeah, I am a people pleaser. I call myself a recovering people pleaser, which is funny because the recovering preacher's kid. I don't know that I'm recovering all that well, though. It still flares up really bad. But thankfully, my husband doesn't have an ounce of people pleaser in him, not in the least little bit. So there have been times where people that he has looked up to or that he knew, I think this is harder, that he knew looked up to him, and they would question or they would be frustrated at our continued love, because I'm sure from the outside it does look like condoning. But my husband, I'm growing in this, but a lot of it, it's his sister, it's not mine. So I try to remember my place, but he's also very good about like, okay, that's a little too far. But so far we have been blessed with, she really understands. She loves the kids and she understands those boundaries of letting us parent and letting us teach and all of that. And she hasn't pushed that boundary, but I have seen it a couple of times where my husband's been like, I think that's enough, or, politely disagreed, which can be very difficult. It's a lot easier to just disagree, leave the politeness.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about the disciples. So here Jesus has done life very closely with these 12 men and literally poured his life into them. And even at the end, he had one deny him 3 times, one betray him and turn him into the police, into the government. And yet he's knowing that they were fixing to do that. He even called them out like, hey, just to give everybody a heads up, this is about to go down. And then he washed their feet.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, that was an example of him loving them well when disagreeing with them, because I was thinking about, he even called them out.
Yeah. We have
Lovingly.
definitely lost that art to serve. And man, everything in us wants to say to like protect our ego and to not stoop so low as to serve someone that we know will talk about us or disagrees with us. It irks us so bad. And we've got to live that crucified life.
And don't we look for it to be easy?
Yes, yes.
My checklist. Okay, step number 1. This is what I need to do is just to make it easier for me. But I know that's not the way it is. It's just going right back to Jesus's example is what you're saying. And from what I'm hearing too, it comes down to the whole relationship with the person.
Yeah.
The way you interact with his sisters is going to be different from a stranger
It is.
that you just met, so I think maybe that's where I get lost sometimes. It's got to be a one, one or all, it's either this way or this way. But if I don't have a relationship with them, I can't really, I don't know, I can't have that hard, fast, I guess, I don't want to say judgment, but it'd be different, I guess. I don't know how I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, all of it's difficult to navigate through. So, and you're right, it does make a difference between that kind of relationship or if you just pass somebody by or, all the different scenarios that life throws.
Well, I say it is so funny. If you met our mother and then you met us, it's such a parallel in that, well, it ain't even a parallel because they ain't even on the same track, because our mama can go into an environment where she knows no one.
Mm-hmm.
And within an hour, she knows everything about everybody in that room. And I'm over like at the doctor's office. She took me to have a procedure one time, and I come out high on anesthesia, and she is like introducing me to all her new friends in the waiting room, And I go to the doctor and I play on my phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please do not talk to me. I don't want any strangers talking to me. But at the same time, I will say our mom gets that right. She loves people well. She interacts with people. She talks to people. She asks people questions. And that's something I would like to get better at. because as you're talking, that's what I'm seeing, Lisa, as you said, whether it's someone you meet just then, we can still show them Jesus in that 5-minute interaction we have with them. Even though it's not a deep relationship like with your sister-in-law, we can still have those little moments that I'm passing by because I'm like stranger danger. I don't, oh my gosh, it's a stranger, And then I think, well, Jesus had 5-minute interactions with people too.
Yeah.
The woman at the well.
Well, yeah, woman at the well.
And so I don't know. I'm very convicted on this topic. Like, it makes me almost have the willies and unable to sit still in my chair because I'm very convicted, because it's so much easier to do life with people and be kind to people that you're all on the same team.
Yeah.
You all believe the same. Like, we all believe the same thing about Jesus. We all believe the same thing about sin. We all believe the exact same way. It's so much that comfort zone.
Yes.
And to go outside that comfort zone, it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Another good thing, I'm telling you, my husband, when I say his world just busted my little bubble, it really did. But I'm so thankful for it because I was very much like you. I will go in the store and I'll go out of the store and I may leave with the butter that I went in there for, but I'm not making extra conversation. And then he's just so bold about it and it seems so effortless. And he just asks them, something came up yesterday, and one of the blessings of the world getting darker and getting further and further away from the Lord is that it now takes less and less light. And not that that should be a cop out, but it just takes the little things to make a big difference. We went thrift store shopping yesterday, and when we get up to the cash register, and my husband goes, "Well, how has your day been?" And her lanyard had some political statements on that was not where we land. And she stopped scanning his stuff or our stuff, and she was like, "Nobody asked me that." She said, "That's crazy. I don't remember the last time somebody asked me that. It's always, 'Oh, how are you? I'm good. How are you?' And then I scan your stuff." And she just sat there, and it really took her back so much so that she never answered the question. And so she did scan her stuff, and I'm like, "Well, how was your day?" And she was like, "It was really good." So just that little bit, when someone stops and is like, "Wait, that was different." One of the blessings of the world getting darker is that it doesn't take as much light to make a difference.
So we, like you said, have told us earlier, we overcomplicate this. I want to be able to go in prepared to know what to say. Okay, this is the planner in me, Lori. Okay, right. I'm going to anticipate
Yes.
the conversation I'm going to have with somebody that I'm going to end up confronting, and this is what they're going to say, and this is how I'm going to react. Instead of just letting it just flow, I just overcomplicate it.
Lisa and I recently took a trip to Texas with our husbands. Texas will never be the same again after the four of us were there. But I posed the question, I am rebellious at heart. And I said, I wish there was a list of rules of yeses and nos. Do this, don't do that. It is obvious. I would break every one of them, but at least I would know the rule.
Yeah.
At least I would know it was broken, Me and the Lord are working on that. I'm a work in progress. And I can't remember if it was Lisa or John was like, Lori, you're really overcomplicating it because, there were some people that asked Jesus the exact same thing. Hey, just what are the rules? And then Jesus says, love God and love people. So, Lori, how about you just try to love God and love people and then let the rest worry about itself? And that has really stuck with me. And as you're talking, that's all I keep hearing over and over is you love God and you love people. It's not a but, it's an and. The two go hand in hand.
I was reading something the other day, and I'm really bad about reading bits and pieces. Who it was from, I don't know. C.S. Lewis, a cereal box, I don't know. But they were talking about how truth and love cannot be separated. If you love someone, well, if my husband loves me, but he's living a lie, does he really love me? Like, obviously not the way that he's saying it. But if I only have truth without love, like, who cares? Who cares what I say is love because or is truth because I'm not loving them. They're going to turn their backs. So I'm going to do more harm than good. So this world likes to to separate them. Love is all that matters. But if you're not telling them the truth, if asked an inappropriate way and as the Lord leads, I think that's another thing is we meet somebody, anybody, any kind of sin, are you a glutton, whatever. And we find that out and we just feel like it's our job. They got to know, but the Lord may not necessarily be pulling us in that way.
Man, don't we get mad when people point out our sin?
Yeah.
But we find ourselves where we got to tell everybody else what they're doing. Lori has to tell other people what they're doing wrong.
And as you were saying that, yet again, I can give you the synopsis of the scripture, but don't ask me the chapter, the verse, the book, wherever it is, where, is it in Colossians maybe, where Paul says, if you speak truth, but you don't have love, you're nothing but a sounding gong. And that's
First
exactly
Corinthians.
what you, First Corinthians. I knew it was a C.
Yeah, you did good.
But that's exactly how you just said that is like, if we just speak truth without the love, then it just goes in one ear and out the other. Yeah. Basically.
And people can feel the difference. They can feel just like we can, if somebody's just kind of making conversation and get by, or if someone seriously sees us, as a person, they can tell the difference.
We recently did a podcast with my daughter. And I had my daughter very young. I was 18 when I had her. And so we grew up together and lots of mistakes were made. And so she and I joke a lot about I kicked the door down for her to make changes in our family so that it just doesn't continue on for generations. But the whole podcast with her is my daughter feels very strong. She has 4 children as well. And she feels very strongly with the belief that it is her and her husband's job to reflect Jesus for their children. She said one of the things she brought up was, I don't want to teach my children to share because it's the right thing to do. I want to teach them to share because God's word says share. And I was thinking about what a beautiful mirrored image of Jesus you and your husband are being to your children, because you're living out that truth of teaching them to love people and to love them well. And I commend you. That is such a beautiful thing, because I did not do that well at all with my kids. And they're grown now and God just works it all out, But does that cause y'all to change how you interact with things, or do you have to sit your children down? I know you said they were younger, but do you have to have like hard conversations with your children on their age level, or is it literally just you're letting the day go and let your children see how? Am I making sense? My question.
Yeah. No, the thing about this world is that we homeschool, so our kids are very sheltered in that way, but there's stuff all around. Like, we don't make them wear boxes in Walmart. Sometimes it would be beneficial, but so they see things and they ask questions. And my oldest, especially, my second oldest, is a lot like me. Looking back, there were so many things going on in the world around me. I didn't have the slightest idea. And so with her, it's very easy. But with him, he's a question asker. And also, we don't want to wait until they necessarily have those questions if we're around a situation with having family like that. We open it up to them a lot of the times in age appropriate ways, prayerfully. I read the other day that one of the good things and convenient about being a parent is that you don't have to look for ways to serve. They're right there at 6:00 in the morning asking for cereal. And the same thing for our situation is that we don't necessarily have to look for ways to be around people that we don't agree with and that our children know that we don't agree with. They're in our family. And so that's convenient in that way, really, that the Lord has made us do that in front of them. And I'm so thankful for that. And I pray that we're doing it right. You say that we're being a light to our kids. Only time will tell. We may jack them up really good, but we're trying. But yeah, we've had to both just bring them along for the ride, more casual, learn from our example kind of thing as we have them over here and we cook them dinner and we ask them how their life is going, things like that. But we've also definitely had to have purposeful conversation about whether they bring up things. The first time that we talked about homosexuality, we do devotion at nighttime. I believe that's how it started. And something came up about that, about it was in a verse. And my son was like, well, what is that? And so we're like, well, buddy, it's when a man and a man or a woman and a woman have a relationship like mom and daddy have. Well, he goes off. Everything is black and white at the age of, whatever he was. He goes off. He's like, that's so wrong. That's not the way that God designed it. And in that moment, I'm very thankful that we had a name to put with it because he loves her. So it brought him back down. We're like, well, buddy. And we said the name is, that's how she lives. And he was like, oh. And he became so broken. So in some ways, it has been a blessing. And I've seen so many preachers' kids, because they are taught what's right and what's wrong, they only see it black and white, and they lack that love until they're older and able to work that out themselves, as how to handle people. Our kids, are thrown right in the middle of it. And so that moment was a blessing because it brought his little mind up. We still love them. And we're like, yeah, buddy, we still love them.
Wow.
Lori, as Alicia was talking, that is the difference, I think, between our generation and their generation now, is because growing up in the 80s and the early 90s, it was so black and white, right and wrong. There was this and that. And if it was wrong, that was it, And now the way our society is, trying to find the right word, but there's just more of a situation like you're talking about, that you had to bring it back down with your son, because that's the way I am. It's a black or white. There is lots of no gray areas lots of times, that you have to say, no, but look, this is how so-and-so's lifestyle is, and this is how we love them still, because they're a part of our life. And that's, I think, the difference in the next generation maybe is doing it a lot better than we did. Oh, I know they're doing a lot better than we did.
Only time will tell. Like I said, we may be jacking them up real good, but we're trying.
I can remember when my kids were younger, and our daughter, one thing we did get right is our children as adults are very comfortable to tell me and my husband things. They're not afraid. They don't beat around the bush about much of anything. And both of them have said that what was so hard the way they grew up is it was, you do what I say because I said do it. They were like, you didn't give any context behind that. Mind you, I was not saved till I was an adult. And so my husband was saved as a teenager, but did not live the lifestyle until, golly, we'd been married about 15 years. And so our kids grew up in a very colorful household for about 15 years. And so, but the thing is, it was almost like, you say yes because I said yes, and you say no because I said no. There wasn't the conversations. And so I see that they, as young adults, are trying to change that. I see my daughter changing that with her children, almost to get them to ask questions. I think I was afraid for my children to ask questions. And so
it is scary. And when they will ask questions is another scary one, because they pick the most inopportune times.
yes.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
But it's like, but isn't it crazy that as an adult, we want to be able to ask a question and get an answer, but yet we don't give the same space to children? Or let me take it a step further, someone who, because y'all have this relationship with your sister-in-law, she has the space, the safe space to come to y'all and ask y'all questions. Our prayer is that she would be able to ask you questions about the faith, about Jesus. And that's what I see when we don't love people well. I'm not creating a place for them to come talk to me if and when God pricks their heart.
Yeah.
Who are they going to go to?
Yeah, we have not made it that far yet, but prayerfully, I do. My husband's been great because, like I said, they were best friends. And so he has tried to keep that open and been really good with that. So I pray that she does see that in us, but we'll see.
How do you think that as your children age and as they grow in this crazy world that we live in, you plan on, or I don't mean like you and your husband sit down and just have these in-depth conversations. When they get this age, we'll do this. But is it more you're just trusting God to lead y'all with every step of the way? Or do y'all try to have a plan of moving forward with the relationship?
I don't know. Everything is so tentative. I get overly hopeful because I know the power of God. I know how much He loves our kids and my son especially. He was the firstborn. For a while we lived with his parents, and I can't remember if she lived there or was in town. She was around him a lot in that first couple of years. So there's a special pull there. So I get too hopeful. I'm like, she's just on the brink. She's going to call me any minute and I'm going to lead her to the Lord. And then there'll be something that's like, oh, we're not as close to that as I thought we were. So I don't know. It could be tomorrow that everything blows up because my husband and I have said it's our kids first. And sometimes that's going to hurt. And sometimes that's going to be interpreted as a lack of love from us to her. And it's not, it's just, we don't co-parent with anybody. So if it's getting in the way of that some way or another, and I don't see that happening, so far it's been great. But I think this relationship is a little bit more fragile. So the game plan right now is just one step at a time. Continue to love her. Another thing is just for us to be real. You know, we're quick to point out everybody else's issues while pretending like we have none. But then when we're really real, and she's like, they're not pretending like Jesus is their band-aid for all their problems. He just walks with them through it. So right now, it's step by step, just trust in the Lord that He will make us the light, and that even if the relationship tomorrow ends, that He was glorified for as long as it lasted.
And that might be some of my problem too, is I'm such a fixer and I want to see a completion. If something started, I want to see it end. And it's very hard, like in this situation, that you don't know how, you know, it's going to end. You know, how is God going to answer it? I go back to Granny, her whole entire life, she prayed for our uncle and their family to come back to church and to the Lord, and she prayed that to the day she died. And right now, I think only one has returned on that side. Am I right, Lori? You know, so she hasn't seen it in her lifetime, and that's where I want to see it now. I want to see it now.
Yes.
And it's just remembering that it's not in our timing, it's in God's timing. So thank you for that reminder. I think I cut you off, Lori. What were you fixing to say?
I was just actually kind of fixing to go along the same lines of I am not a marathon prayer. I mean, it's pretty, I've been pretty honest about my prayer life. It tanks a lot of the time. I mean, like, I'm real good about praying to God in traffic, like, Lord, I would really appreciate it if you'd move these cars out of my way, and things like that. But I'm not good at marathon praying. And I can remember as a child, we would go stay at our grandmother's house. They live like basically next door for about a week every summer. And I was down there. I don't know if I was down there by myself or what, but anyway, it had not rained and they were going to have a Wednesday night prayer meeting for rain. And my granny picked up her umbrella as we were walking out the door to go to church. And I was like, why are you taking an umbrella? It's not raining. And she said, because girl, I'm going to pray for rain. And when we left, it was sprinkling. And I can't remember if it actually rained, or if it was just a sprinkle. But in that moment, as a little child, I thought, oh my gosh, my grandmother like legit talks to God, she legit talks to Him. And so I think about that, and I'm often convicted because I'm not a marathon prayer. And like Lisa, I think I'm like you. It's because if I pray and then I don't see the fruit of that prayer, it's almost like I move on. Not that I get bored, but I'm just like, well, I guess it is what it is. And so I guess, Alicia, my question, going all the way around the world to get to my question, is do you find yourself being like, why keep praying about this?
Yeah. Something that I've had to readjust my thought process, and I'm actually going through a Bible study about prayer right now with a friend, so that's a blessing. And this has helped, is that prayer is not to move God to do something. That would be awesome. That would be so great. But it's to get our eyes realigned with what he wants. There's so many verses that talk about, he's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to him. So it's easy to stay right there like, Lord, this is not your will. I know it's not. So I pray her into heaven right now. But also, we know free will. He is a gentleman. He doesn't force anybody to accept him. And free will's a booger sometimes, I'm thankful for
Yeah.
mine, but other people's are an issue. So when I pray now, it has to be definitely a realigning of, Lord, help me to glorify you. Help me to see your will, not just in her life, but in my life. Help me to be submissive to whatever it is.
That one was
And I don't
good.
like it. I don't like it
Yeah,
all
I
the
was
time.
like, that one just hurt.
It
That
does.
hurt a lot. One hurt a lot because if I'm praying for my eyes to be aligned with God, then I'm having to submit to the fact that I'm not in control.
Yes. Yep. It's like handing God the stool and steadily like trying to put one booty cheek on there, And yes, it's a constant thing, which is probably why he told us to pray without ceasing, because we're constantly trying to get that thing back.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times that's why I'm not if I'm just going to be honest about it, why I'm not a marathon prayer is because what I'm praying is really what I want. It's my
Yes.
control of it, and I'm not praying, Lord, I trust that you're going to work this out for your good. I just go to him with here's my list. And this person is not living the life that I want them to live and that is in accordance with the Bible. So you get on that. I would
Yes.
appreciate it. That's basically in that. And we can do it very reverently, but that's still what we're saying.
Lord, please stop it right now.
Well, as we're kind of wrapping up the podcast for today, like, what is the one thing, Alicia, that you want everyone to take away from your story and what we've all talked about today, so that we can love people well, even though we might disagree with what they're doing or the way they want to live?
Yeah. No, if I could take one thing and talk about it, it would be not to try to separate love and truth. Love them. They are made in the image of God. Even the ones that we don't agree with, the ones who are more in your face about it, they have talents, they have worries, they have life struggles, they have life joys, and ask them about it. Don't be afraid to take care of their needs, whether it's cook them dinner or it doesn't have to be complicated. But remember their humanity in the middle of that. And if Christ loved them, then so can we. It doesn't have to be too terribly complicated.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Be sure and like, follow, and subscribe. And also check us out at therecoveringpreacherskids.com.